Everything you're experiencing right now didn't come from the outside. It's a broadcast from within. If your current reality feels misaligned, don't rush to blame the world. Adjust the frequency you're transmitting every day. It's not luck, not circumstances, but consciousness operating with the precision of gravity that shapes everything in your life. This video is not just information. It's the operating manual to rewire your inner system and step back into your role as the creator. Every life circumstance begins in the mind. Every circumstance you are experiencing right now, whether you are aware of it or not, originated from the silent movements within your mind. There is no situation in life that is the result of mere chance. No event simply happens randomly. Life is not a series of disconnected incidents determined by external forces. It is a precise reflection of what you have believed, thought, felt, and repeatedly rehearsed in your inner world. This truth is not about blame, nor is it meant to make you feel guilty. It is here to return the authorship of your life, something the unconscious mind has quietly taken from you for far too long. If you can accept that everything you are going through stems from your inner state, then you hold the key to change your entire reality. What you call circumstance is merely the tip of the iceberg. It is the outcome of countless mental images, emotions, and deep-seated beliefs your mind has absorbed systematically. Whether you see yourself as optimistic or negative, your reality will always reflect what you feel most intensely. When you fear loss, you are broadcasting loss. When you carry doubt, life will arrange situations to confirm it. Emotion is the glue that binds thought into physical reality. Mere thinking is not enough to form a circumstance, but if a thought is repeatedly felt and emotionally charged, the unconscious registers it as a command. From there, external events begin to shape, sometimes quietly, sometimes like a raging storm, but always in alignment with your inner programming. This is not vague philosophy, nor is it shallow positive thinking. This is the exact way the law of consciousness operates with unwavering precision. You cannot plant seeds of lack and expect to harvest abundance. You cannot feed fear every day and expect peace to arrive. The universe does not respond to luck or lone willpower. It responds neutrally to the energy field you emit from within. What is surprising is that most people have no idea what signals they are actually sending out. We are taught how to behave, how to speak, how to interact, but almost no one teaches us how to manage the field of thought and emotion that silently governs everything. So we repeat old patterns, recycle old scripts, and call it fate. But fate is not pre-written. It is rewritten every day in every line of thinking you allow your mind to chase after. Every time you say life is hard, you are programming hardship. Every time you complain that you are not enough, you are broadcasting unworthiness. And every time you let a negative thought take root long enough, you are planting a real seed into the fertile spiritual ground you carry within. From there, the very things you dread begin to take shape, not because someone is punishing you, but because you have unknowingly summoned them through repeated focus. That is why you must return to your role as the creator. No one else can take responsibility for what you are experiencing, not because they are bad, but because they do not have the authority. That authority belongs to you. It has always belonged to you. From the moment you learn to feel, to think, and to choose, challenging situations do not arrive to make you suffer. They arrive to illuminate outdated patterns that need to be released. They are not punishments. They are invitations to awaken from years of unconsciousness. When you change how you think about a problem, that problem begins to lose its power over you. When you recognize that circumstances are merely mirrors of the mind, you stop battling the outer world and begin adjusting the inner image. And then the unimaginable begins to unfold, not through force, but through subtle shifts deep within your awareness. Life no longer becomes something you must fight. It becomes something you can shape. And it all begins the moment you pause and courageously observe yourself, not to judge, but to remember the power you have always carried. Every circumstance is not just an outcome, it is feedback. And your mind is the cause. Change the cause, and you change every result. This is the starting point. There is nowhere else to look, and no one else to wait for. It has always begun with you, and it always will. People are creating reality, unconsciously. Have you ever wondered why two people with the same desire and the same level of effort can end up with completely different results? Why some people seem to attract luck and opportunities effortlessly, while others remain stuck in a cycle of struggle, disappointment, and stagnation? The answer does not lie in circumstances, or in where someone starts, or anything external. It lies in the level of awareness within each individual. The truth is, most of us are creating our entire reality in the most unconscious way possible. We do not know what we are thinking. We do not know what we are feeling. We do not know what we are repeating. And it is this not knowing that becomes the root of all limitation. Each day goes by, and we let our minds run like an unfiltered radio station, constantly broadcasting signals of conflict, negativity, and limitation without even realizing it. You may think you are a positive person, but if you wake up worrying about money, spend your afternoon comparing yourself to others, and end your day feeling like you are not good enough, then do not be surprised if life keeps delivering lack, competition, and self-doubt. This is a law. The law of the mind does not operate based on reason. It operates on the strongest emotional signal that is repeated most often. Your subconscious does not distinguish right from wrong. It does not analyze logic. It does not care whether you studied philosophy or not. It simply records. And whatever you repeat, whether imagining the worst-case scenario or constantly reliving past failures, it will treat as a command to be executed in reality. The world you see is not an absolute truth. It is a reflection of the consciousness model you are carrying. And if you do not know what you are carrying, then you are living according to a mind that has not been trained. A mind controlled by habit, memory, bias, and fear. Maybe you have heard somewhere that you are the creator of your life. But ask yourself, how have you been creating? What have you planted from within? Are you truly observing, selecting, shaping, and sending out images that align with the person you want to become? Or are you constantly reacting to life, unaware that you are the central broadcasting source? Here is the question for you. If you truly understood that every thought is a blueprint for your future, how much longer would you let worry, judgment, and old memories keep repeating in your mind? Are you really thinking what you want, or are you thinking what you fear? Thank you for being here, for continuing to listen, and for having the courage to stay on the journey of looking within. The moment you ask yourself, what am I thinking right now, is the moment you begin to awaken. When you can observe thought, you are no longer a victim of it. When you know what you are creating, you can choose again. And when you choose again from a place of awareness, you are no longer creating from the unconscious. You are becoming a true creator. The problem is not whether you are thinking or not. You are thinking all the time. The problem is whether you are aware of what you are thinking. Between one thought and one reaction lies freedom. Between an old emotion and a new decision lies power. And in the moment you pause and recognize, you are no longer the one being pulled by the script. You are the one beginning to rewrite it. If your life were a movie, most of the scenes so far have been directed by the unconscious. But you are not required to keep playing that role. You can pause. You can ask questions. You can change the script. And the miracle is, when you truly change on the inside, the scenery outside, no matter how old or familiar, will have no choice but to change too. Not because you force it, but because you no longer hold it in place. This is the first step out of the invisible loop of the unconscious. Not to win against life, but to awaken from the patterns you no longer wish to carry. And life will have no choice but to respond, because that is law. And law does not fail. The law of consciousness operates as precisely as gravity. The law of consciousness is not an abstract philosophical concept or a personal belief. It is an absolute law that functions with the same precision as gravity. You do not need to believe in gravity for it to affect you, and you cannot escape its consequences by denying its existence. You jump from a high place. You fall, regardless of who you are, what you think, or what faith you follow. In the same way, when you hold a thought that is clear enough, emotionally charged enough, and repeated enough, it forms a mental image, and that image becomes the blueprint for the circumstances you are now living. There are no exceptions, no gray areas, no long-term delays that can interrupt the operation of this principle. Every mental image you hold with emotion must reflect itself into a corresponding physical reality sooner or later. It is a flawless cycle, impartial, without favorites, and without punishment. The only difference between those who live in harmony and those who live in chaos lies in how consciously they understand and apply this principle. When you realize that every thought is a seed, you will stop wasting your mental energy. You will stop speaking carelessly. You will stop letting negative emotions repeat as if they were harmless habits, because you know that everything you emit is recorded and reflected back by the law of consciousness with exact frequency. Some people wonder why they work hard, live kindly, and still face difficulty. The answer lies in the field of thought they nurture within. You can take positive action while still carrying fear of failure. You can speak words of love while still holding a self-image of unworthiness. And the subconscious does not respond to words. It only mirrors the images and emotions you repeat. This is why action alone is not enough. You can work tirelessly, but if deep down you believe money is hard to earn or you are never good enough, then the results will always prove you right. Not because the world is against you, but because you have unconsciously programmed it that way. And the law of consciousness has only one job: to respond to the signal you emit with unwavering accuracy. You cannot trick this system with surface appearances. It does not care what you say to others. It only responds to how you feel when you are alone. What you hold longest in your heart becomes the strongest in your energetic field. And when you maintain a negative image long enough, your circumstances will adjust to match. Not as punishment, but as the consistency of a principle. Just as water flows to the lowest point, thought flows toward matching frequencies. Resonance is the nature of this universe, and the law of consciousness is the bridge between the unseen world within and the physical world without. Understanding this is the first step to reclaiming your power. You no longer have to fight the world. You only need to change the signal you are sending. When you do that with clarity, the universe has no choice but to reorganize your circumstances to match. And this process does not have to take years. It begins the moment you shift your field of awareness. Sometimes a single deep realization is enough to reverse a chain of reactions that has lasted for decades. Mental images are like blueprints. Emotion is the electricity that heats the blueprint, and the law of consciousness is the mechanism that brings it into form. It has no morality, no judgment between good or bad. It simply copies and reflects whatever you send, as long as it is repeated with enough belief and emotional charge. So, if you have not yet seen what you desire show up, it is not because this law is broken. It is because you are still sending mixed, conflicting, or more negative signals than you realize. Just like gravity, if you understand how to work with it, it becomes a powerful ally. You can build, lift, and rise if you cooperate with its flow. But if you ignore or defy it, you will be pulled down no matter how well-intentioned you are. The law of consciousness works the same way. When you understand and apply it, you are no longer working alone. You do not need to rely on luck. Every thought becomes a choice. Every emotion becomes a signal. And every image you hold becomes a living blueprint waiting to take form. You do not need to control everything out there. You only need to master the one thing that is fully within your command, your thoughts. When you do that with consistency, you will realize that the miracle was never out there. It has always been inside you. And the law of consciousness is the bridge between where you are and where you truly belong. No one can cross that bridge for you. But this law will function faithfully, step by step, just as gravity pulls a falling leaf to the ground, without error, without delay, without bias, and without needing anyone's permission. Awaken from old patterns to master creation. You do not need to change the entire world. You only need to wake up from a single pattern. That pattern does not lie in your circumstances. It lies in the way you have been conditioned to perceive yourself. You are not limited by reality. You are limited by thought habits that have been silently repeating for too long. These invisible patterns were shaped by parental teachings, societal biases, old wounds, and conclusions you made before you truly understood yourself. Then you lived inside those patterns without realizing it. Each time you react the same way, judge the same way, or feel powerless like before, you are not choosing, you are repeating. What is old is not the circumstance, it is the mind. It not only makes you act like yesterday, but also makes you expect results identical to yesterday. And because the mind is the architect of reality, you keep building the same house while hoping the landscape will change. Awakening is not a mystical experience. It is the moment you realize you have the right to stop living the way you always have. It is that pause in the middle of a familiar thought where you ask a question no one ever taught you to ask, such as, why do I believe this? Why do I react this way? Why do I assume life must be hard, painful, sacrificial, and exhausting to be worthy? When you begin to question the old pattern, you are not breaking yourself. You are opening the first door to becoming a conscious creator. No real freedom happens until you dare to look directly at the beliefs that have been controlling you. And when you look at them with awareness, you will see that most of what you thought was your personality or destiny is really just the reflex of a mind programmed from the outside. You are not your fear. You are not the voice in your head that says you are not enough. You are not your past or your wounds. These are all layers you have carried, but you can take them off at any moment if you have the courage to wake up from the old script. Mastering creation does not begin with thinking big or setting high goals. It begins with knowing which pattern you are operating from. If you cannot see the pattern, you will be ruled by it. Every time you say, I have always been this way, I cannot change, I tried but I failed, you are handing over your creative power to an outdated program. You are not failing. You are simply repeating what you have not yet observed. Awakening is when you see the cycle and choose not to participate anymore. That is not escape. That is return. You are not becoming someone else. You are returning to the self that was never conditioned. That self is not limited. It does not carry the past. It is not bound by fear. And it is always capable of creating something new, no matter how many years you have lived inside the old. All it takes is one moment of awareness. Awareness that you can choose differently. Awareness that no one else has the right to define you but yourself. Awareness that the future is not the sum of your past. It is the response to the signal you are sending now. Every time you recognize a pattern and no longer follow it, you are breaking the cycle. And when the cycle is broken, creative energy is automatically released. It does not need to be controlled. It just needs you not to repeat the old. The space between the old and the new is where the miracle happens. But you must be patient enough not to return to what is familiar, no matter how comfortable it feels. The old pattern gives you the illusion of safety because it tells you what to expect. But the price of that safety is a repetitive life. The new may feel unclear, but if you want to step into the role of creator, you must embrace uncertainty as part of freedom. Stepping out of the old pattern is the most sacred act you can do for yourself. It does not need to be witnessed. It does not need approval. But that quiet act is enough to begin rewriting your entire life. No promises needed, no declarations required, only a steady commitment in every choice, every response, every thought that is observed and renewed with awareness. Every day is an invitation. Either you live inside the old pattern with old results, or you step out to reclaim your creative flow. And that does not depend on circumstances. It begins when you choose to think differently about yourself. When you stop repeating the old, you are already creating. And when you create from a state of awareness, nothing can stop you anymore. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed the way you show up in the world. And that is true freedom. Mental imagery, the key to creating reality. Everything you have ever touched, seen, or experienced began with an image formed first in your own mind or in someone else's, TC. No building was ever constructed unless it first existed in a blueprint. No piece of music was ever played unless it had first been envisioned in the heart of its composer. And no life circumstance has ever appeared without first being outlined as a vivid inner image within your consciousness. This is not a metaphor. It is how reality is born. Mental imagery is the invisible blueprint, yet it is the most concrete factor in the process of creating your life. You cannot see it with your eyes, but it is shaping everything you call reality. Every time you think about something repeatedly, you are sketching a pattern for it. Every time you attach strong emotions to an image in your mind, you are pouring mental cement to solidify the form of the future reality. Just like a sculptor shaping a mold before casting the material, your mind is constantly crafting images that your subconscious uses as the foundation to attract matching circumstances. The danger does not lie in your inability to shape images. The issue is that you are shaping them unconsciously. You are imagining things going wrong. You are picturing failure, rejection, and being forgotten. You are reliving moments of offense and pain. And by holding on to those images with unhealed emotion, you are reinforcing that exact pattern into your next reality. The mind does not distinguish between what you want and what you fear. It only registers the level of clarity and emotion. What is repeated most, felt most vividly, and imagined most clearly becomes the command it follows. That is why successful people are not merely those who take action, but those who know how to shape mental imagery with precision. Before stepping into reality, they have already lived with that version of themselves internally. They have felt it, seen it, and believed in it with their entire nervous system. And when the image is clear enough, the emotion strong enough, and the frequency high enough, reality has no choice but to align. This is a principle, not a hope. This is law, not motivation. The image you hold is the foundation, not your words, not fleeting thoughts, but the deepest picture you allow to dwell in your unconscious mind. Some people want health but always picture themselves as weak. Some want love but carry the image of being abandoned. Some want wealth but constantly replay scenes of lack and confusion. And then they wonder why life does not change, unaware that they are preserving the same internal blueprint. When you understand this, you no longer need to control the world. You only need to become a conscious designer. Before changing any result, you must first change the mental image behind it. What you are holding in your mind is the cause. The outer world is only the surface. The root lies within. And if the root stays the same, the surface will always return to its original form no matter how much effort you make. Begin by asking, what image am I holding of my health, my worth, my desired relationship, my potential in this life? Be honest. Do not answer with willpower. Answer with feeling. Because the true image does not live in words. It lives in the vibration you feel when you think about something. If the image you hold makes you contract, you are sending the wrong signal. If it makes you expand, you are creating space for it to grow. Each time you vividly imagine a new life scene with clarity and harmonious emotion, you are softening the old mold and planting a seed for a new blueprint. And if you do this consistently, the mind will adopt the new image as its default. The issue is not what you have experienced. The issue is which image you choose to keep. And the truth is, you always have the power to choose. Mental imagery is where the past ends and the future begins. It does not merely describe what is, it determines what will be. Every image is a signal, every signal is a command, and every command is a seed that will grow into reality if nurtured properly. You do not need to see it with your eyes to know it is real. You only need to feel it clearly in your mind. And when your clarity is strong enough, life responds without delay. Not because you force it, but because you have become the designer of your own experience. Not through effort, but through imagery. Not through will, but through inner certainty. And mental imagery is always the beginning of everything you call life. The mind is a production system. You reap what you sow. The mind is not a storage space. It is a production system. Every thought you allow to linger, every emotion you nurture daily, becomes raw material fed into that system. And unlike a warehouse where things can stay idle, the mind operates like a factory in constant motion. It never stops. It is producing something, even when you are not paying attention. If you feed it the belief that you are not enough, it will generate a reality where you constantly feel lacking. If you feed it fear of failure, it will manufacture circumstances where you repeatedly encounter resistance. On the other hand, if you feed it peace, groundedness, and a clear image of what you truly want, that system will also begin to operate in that direction, naturally, without force. This is not about vague belief. This is a mental mechanism, operating with precision no different than the law of gravity or attraction. Every thought is an order. Every emotion is production energy. Every repeated action is a program being activated to materialize what has already been ordered. You may not name it, but the mind does not need names. It only needs instructions. And you are issuing instructions every second through what you choose to think, feel, and believe. People who do not understand this often try to change results without ever changing the raw material. They race, struggle, and exhaust themselves trying to control circumstances without pausing to examine what they are feeding into their mental system each day. Then they feel disappointed. They blame fate. They say life is unfair. But the truth is not out there. It is within. The mind does not judge right or wrong, good or bad. It simply responds to structure. If you constantly input negative images, self-deprecating words, or emotions of resentment, you are programming your production line to create versions of life that match them. And then you wonder why things keep repeating. But you are not looking at where it all begins. You are not inspecting your mental factory. You are not reviewing the command codes you have been unconsciously issuing for years. A seed cannot grow into a different fruit. If you plant apples, you cannot harvest grapes. If you sow doubt, you cannot receive peace. If you plant suspicion, you cannot create a reality based on trust. And what matters most is that you are sowing every day. No one else can do this for you. No one else can inspect your input. Only you can know what is running in the silent space of your mind. And this is the moment to return. To return not to the noise outside, but to the quiet current of your mind's operation. This is the power of voice within. Not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. A space not loud, but filled with commands that are shaping the world you live in. If you do not return, you will be carried away. You will believe that life is random, that luck decides everything, that you must work harder, push further, only to keep repeating old results. But once you come back and look at your production system, you will see that nothing happens without a root cause. Everything has a starting chain. And that chain begins with what you have sown. When you change the input, the output must change. Not instantly, but inevitably. Change does not begin on the outside. It begins inside. It begins with conscious choices in every thought, every feeling, every word. You do not need to change everything at once. Just start by asking, what am I running in my mind right now? What am I producing that I no longer wish to receive? Am I sabotaging my own system through outdated habits? And if I see that clearly, am I willing to change the way I plant? Rebuilding can begin at any moment, as long as you return to the inner space and reset the production commands. You do not need to shout to be heard. You only need to whisper a new command from a deep and steady place. And the entire system will begin to shift. No need to rush. No need to force. Your system has always been ready. It has simply been waiting for you to become the conscious operator. And from the moment you realize this, everything around you will begin to shift in alignment with the system you have just reset. You reap. What you sow is no longer a slogan. It becomes a daily reminder to live as the master of your mental machinery, not through pressure, but through awareness, not through effort, but through presence. And the results will follow with absolute accuracy, because the mind never betrays its principle. It only waits for you to return. If you want to change your circumstances, change your inner frequency. Every circumstance you are living in right now is not the result of luck, but the precise reflection of the inner frequency you are broadcasting each day. This is not some vague spiritual concept, but a natural mechanism that operates just like radio waves. You cannot hear a peaceful song if you are tuned into a station that plays chaotic news. You cannot live a life of freedom if your inner world keeps transmitting signals of confusion, control, and lack. Life does not respond to your wishes. It responds to the frequency you consistently repeat. That frequency is not in the words you speak, but in the emotion truly occupying your inner space. If you are living with tension, hurry, jealousy, and frustration, then that is the program you are transmitting. And like a broadcast tower, the universe has no choice but to send back experiences that match, not to punish you, but because it cannot break its own principle of operation. If you want a new season, you cannot expect wheat while sowing thorns. If you want to harvest peace, you cannot keep sending out signals of fear. Changing circumstances does not begin by changing your job, your partner, or your location. It begins by changing your inner frequency. Every outer action is merely a reflection of what you are broadcasting from within. A person who constantly feels wounded will attract more situations that hurt. A person who sees themselves as small will enter rooms that make them feel invisible. Conversely, someone who knows their inner worth, even in silence, will create a space where others naturally listen, not by volume, but by frequency, not through words, but through presence. If you are living in a situation that does not satisfy you, do not resist it. Use it as a mirror. The mirror is never wrong. It only reflects what is truly occupying your frequency within. And when you are honest enough to observe, you will realize that you do not need to fight the old situation. You only need to elevate your inner broadcast, and the new situation will appear naturally. No force needed, no explanation required. When you change the channel, the entire content changes with it. That is the only way to transform without burnout, because you are no longer acting from fear, but from alignment with what you truly desire. And that alignment is the only solid foundation to create a new reality. The issue is not whether you are trying hard enough, but what frequency you are trying from. You can do a lot, but if your actions come from a state of confusion, the result will only be more confusion. You can meditate, read books, and listen to countless spiritual talks. But if deep inside you still believe you are unworthy, that frequency will continue to shape your life, invisibly but accurately. True change begins with cleaning your broadcast channel. Ask yourself, what signal am I sending out every day? Am I transmitting gratitude or blame? Am I radiating trust or doubt? And if I discover that I am off frequency, do I have the courage to adjust? Adjustment is not made by force, but by choice. Choosing a new thought, choosing a higher emotion, choosing words that heal instead of repeating old patterns. These small choices are how you turn the dial of your frequency. And when your frequency changes, life cannot help but respond, not because you control the world, but because you have learned to direct yourself. Your inner frequency is the dividing line between a life that reacts and a life that creates. You are no longer waiting. You are broadcasting. You are no longer a victim. You are the programmer. And the entire outer world, in time, will have no choice but to sync with you. Not because you are desperate, but because you have returned to your rightful place as the creator, a place you never truly lost. You just forgot how to use it. Now is the time to remember, not through effort, but through listening and adjusting. When you adjust your frequency, you do not need to explain yourself to anyone. You only need to live with clarity and honesty in every vibration. And each of those vibrations is a signal sent to the entire universe, so that the outer world is no longer a challenge, but a collaborator, a co-creator, a perfect response to what you have chosen within. And life begins to unfold, not because you have done more, but because you have finally tuned in right. Intentional thinking, building clear mental images with intense emotion. No image is ever manifested unless it first appeared in the mind. Every reality is the result of an image that has been held long enough, clear enough, and intensely enough to be impressed into the subconscious. And once the subconscious has recorded it, your life begins to follow that blueprint with order and precision. What causes most people to fail at creating their reality is not a lack of knowledge, but a lack of intentional thinking. They do not know what they are thinking. They do not know what they have been imagining for years. They do not realize that fear, doubt, and self-diminishment have become the dominant images occupying the stage within them. And they are even more unaware that these very images are writing the script of their lives, not circumstances, not other people, not fate. When you have not clearly defined what you truly want, the subconscious will simply repeat what is familiar. And what is familiar, even if negative, will run on autopilot like a programmed loop. Without a clear image, there is no new reality. Without powerful emotion attached to that image, there is no fuel to create transformation. You cannot expect something vague, cold, and low in vibration to materialize with power. The universe does not respond to words. It responds to the emotional frequency you attach to the image held in your mind. You can repeat a positive affirmation 100 times, but if deep inside you still associate it with doubt, then you are only repeating an empty form. Every miracle begins with a clear image and a vivid emotion. When you dare to see what you want with the eye of your mind, and you allow emotion to pour into every detail, you are sending out a signal that cannot be ignored. And that signal will return not as magic, but as a precise response to the blueprint within you. This is why truly successful people often speak of visualization and emotion, not just action. They understand that action does not create results unless it is guided by the inner image. They know that a person can do many things right, but if the internal image is still one of failure, all effort becomes temporary resistance. On the other hand, a person who holds a clear image of their highest self will automatically make decisions that align with it. They do not need to force it. They do not need to pretend. They only need to stay faithful to that image, and all actions will align naturally. When the inner image is clear enough, real enough, and alive enough, you are no longer moved by circumstances. You become stronger than your environment because you are operating from a design, not reacting to situations. And this is the difference between those who live intentionally and those who live by reflex. Intentional thinking is not about forcing yourself to be positive. It is a way of living in which you are conscious enough to observe, select, and nurture images that empower you. instead of continuing to feed the ones that keep you small. And you do not do it superficially. You take time, you repeat, you feel, you merge with that image until it becomes natural. And when it becomes natural, you no longer have to try. You simply live as if it were already true. Because to your mind, what is deeply felt is what truly exists. Emotion is the key that opens the door from image to reality. Without emotion, the image is just a still picture. With emotion, the image becomes a living current. And that current will move beyond you and attract opportunities, people, and circumstances that match it. This is not fantasy. This is the actual mechanism of the mind. And when you use it consciously, you no longer feel powerless. You clearly see yourself as the one who sends the signal, not just the one who receives it. You become aware that every moment you are building a design, and you can choose again at any time. This is a power that cannot be taken from you. It can only be forgotten. And now, you have remembered. Remembered not to let vague images steer your life. Remembered so that every thought becomes an internal action, and every internal action, sooner or later, redraws the entire life around you. Sow right, nurture right, harvest right. No one plants an orange seed and expects an apple tree, and no one can tend to soil with indifference and still expect a flourishing harvest. The human mind operates in the same way. What you sow is what you reap, no more, no less. Every thought is a seed. Every emotion attached is the nourishment that feeds it. And consistent behavior is the sunlight, the water, the environment that helps the seed sprout and take form in reality. If you are not satisfied with your results, trace back to what you have planted in your mind. No judgment, no blame, just honest and subtle observation. What dominant idea are you carrying in your mind about money, about relationships, about yourself? That is the seed you chose, even if unconsciously. And the physical world is merely the place where that seed is expressed in form. No outcome is random. No failure is by accident. Everything is a reflection of the seed you planted and the nurturing process you maintained internally. That means if you want a different harvest, you do not need to pray for a new fruit. You need to plant again, and not just plant, but nurture it with consistency, with trust, with aligned emotion. Many people plant in the morning and dig it up by the afternoon to check if it has sprouted. They do not truly trust the process. They do not understand that all growth needs time, quiet, and an invisible yet certain process. When you plant a clear mental image and nourish it with vibrant emotion, you are doing your part. The rest belongs to a greater intelligence, one that always responds with precision to the frequency you emit. If you let doubt creep in, if worry interferes, you do not just halt the growth, you distort the original seed. The image becomes blurred, the signal disrupted, and the result loses its purity. This is why only the steady ones truly taste the sweet, ripe fruit. Because they not only sowed right, they nurtured right, waited right, and harvested right. Sowing the right seed begins with awareness. You do not let your mind select random thoughts. You observe and deliberately choose what you want to plant. You form a clear image. You do not let old emotions cloud your vision. You commit to that image like a gardener, devoted to their beloved soil. You do not ask daily when the result will come. You continue to nourish it with consistent vibration, aligned actions, and trust in the law you are now operating with. The right harvest is the outcome of a precise process, one that cannot be rushed. If you care for a peach tree with patience and love, you cannot force it to bloom just because others already have fruit. Each person has their own planting season. Each type of seed has its own growth cycle. And the only thing you can truly control is the quality of your sowing, your nurturing, and your unwavering certainty that the seed is growing in silence. This is the quiet yet most powerful mission of all: to become a conscious sower. Because such a person will not be swayed by circumstances. They will not lose faith in storms. They live as one who already knows the outcome, even before it appears. The world operates on the law of process, not on fleeting emotions. Seeds do not respond to impatience. They only grow in stability and loyalty to a steady frequency. So instead of asking when your life will change, ask yourself what you have sown, whether you are nurturing it daily, and whether you still believe even when nothing has shown up yet. This is not a comforting philosophy. It is the structural equation of creation, and you are the one designing it each day. You do not need to control the future. You only need to sow the right seed today. You do not need to know when success will arrive. You only need to keep clarity in your heart and feed it with matching emotions. Once the seed has sprouted in the mind, the entire universe will align to bring it to bloom in reality. Not because you forced it, but because you became it from within. And so, you no longer wait for the fruit. You live as the one who has already planted. That person lacks nothing. That person does not worry. That person is never disappointed. That person knows. And that is wholeness. 7 days to reset your consciousness. A powerful practice. Every lasting transformation begins from one clear truth. Your consciousness must be reset like a new operating system. You cannot run a new future on outdated software. And you cannot expect new results while still carrying the old way of thinking, the old reactions, and old unconscious images. Resetting your consciousness is not a vague spiritual experience. It is a sequence of intentional, daily training. For the next 7 days, you are not going to search for more on the outside. You are going to turn inward, to a space where a very special voice exists, a voice that is quiet, but real, subtle, yet unmistakably clear. This is the power of voice within, not just a sound you hear, but a space you return to, a space where you do not just hear the truth, but touch it. On day 1, you sit with yourself and simply observe the mind. No judgment, no interference. You learn to become aware of the stream of thoughts passing through. You realize that most of the time, you are not living in the present, but are being driven by an old chain of unconscious thinking formed years ago. This day is not for fixing, it is for clarifying. You begin to see which mental pattern you are operating on. The truth is never frightening. What is frightening is not realizing you are being controlled. On day 2, you begin choosing your thoughts. You no longer let the mind randomly generate images. You select one image you truly want to become, one reality you want to live in, and begin nurturing it as if it were real, not just visualizing, but feeling it as though it is happening now. You speak the language of someone who already is, already has become, and you observe how your body responds. Every cell begins to record a new signal. On day 3, you realize that emotion is the current that carries mental imagery into reality. Without strong emotion, an image is just a still picture. But when emotion is added, it becomes a living signal. On this day, you choose a high-state gratitude, joy, deep peace, and you hold it in the simplest things. When you wash your hands, you feel grateful the water still flows. When you eat, you thank your body for transforming it. When you breathe, you realize you are still alive. It is in those small things that your consciousness begins to shift. On day 4, you repeat the mental image you chose with even stronger consistency. You are no longer chasing 10 dreams at once. You commit to one. Like an artist focused on carving a single sculpture, you stop being distracted by the external and return to the image every time your mind tries to wander. Repeat, sustain, feel. Refresh the image with the life inside you. This is the moment you are no longer imagining. You are creating. On day 5, you observe how you respond to reality. Anything that irritates you becomes an opportunity to adjust your inner world. Instead of blaming others, you ask, what internal image created this situation? You are no longer a victim of emotion. You become a reader of every signal being sent back from the universe. No more conflict, only awareness and recalibration. On day 6, you become more silent. You reduce noisy interaction. You give your mind room to breathe. That space is where the inner voice becomes stronger, where truth begins to speak clearly. You start to feel silence as a healing field. Nothing to do, just be there and witness that you are changing. No need for validation. No need for instant results. Just presence and the awareness that something is being born within you. On day 7, you reflect without judgment. You write down what image became stronger, what emotion became clearer, which reactions you mastered. You do not write to impress. You write to witness that you have lived differently. A small shift each day creates a new, conscious body. And you now understand. What you need is not more inspiration, but discipline to stay loyal to the image you have chosen. And when that image becomes clear, alive, and real enough, it'll become your physical reality in the future. These 7 days are not for performing miracles. They are for remembering who you truly are. No force needed, no racing required. Only precision with your thoughts, presence in your actions, and loyalty to a reality you have chosen within. When that happens, you no longer need to prove anything. Your very presence carries the message. And you realize you do not need to change the world. You only need to change the consciousness through which you see it, because that consciousness is a living prayer. And this life is already listening. Scientific prayer. Not begging, but declaring truth. Prayer is not the act of a weak soul pleading for mercy from some external divine force. True prayer, in its purest and most powerful form, is a firm declaration of an unchanging truth waiting to be activated from within. It is not a fearful whisper, but a confident affirmation of power. It is not to persuade God to do something, but to remind yourself of what has always been true. A proper prayer never begins from lack. It begins from union. Because the moment you say, I need, you unconsciously affirm separation from the source. But when you say, I am, the entire universe vibrates at that frequency. Scientific prayer is a practice every awakened mind must embody. It does not rely on fleeting emotion or outward ritual. It is based on a deep understanding that all visible things are reflections of consciousness. If you can change your consciousness, you will change form. And prayer is the most powerful tool to reprogram consciousness. Not through pleading, but through recognition. When you say, I am light, you are resetting your entire awareness. When you say, I am peace, you are broadcasting a new frequency to every cell, every nerve, and the whole inner universe. You do not need to wait for a positive emotion to begin praying. It is the right prayer that restores positive emotion. You do not need to wait for external conditions to change before you declare the truth. It is the truth repeated from within that reshapes the outside world. When you understand this, you stop wasting time with empty words. You stop searching for elaborate phrases. You only need a simple sentence, clear, present, resolute. And you repeat it not to convince, but to engrave it. Each correct prayer adjusts your frequency system. It reshapes unconscious beliefs. It transmits a new command into the blueprint of your reality. This is not ritual. This is a technique of life. Some wait for miracles. Others become the creators of miracles. The difference between them is how they pray. Those who pray with worry, doubt, or desperation are affirming that they do not believe they have the right. Those who repeat the truth, declare the reality already present, and live from that place are the ones who operate the law of consciousness with precision. You do not pray to change God. You pray to renew yourself, not to replace divine will, but to clarify the path that brings you back into union with it. You do not need to pretend when you pray, but you need clarity. You need consistency. You need words that are simple, but filled with presence. Each morning, when you open your eyes, instead of rushing to your problems, you choose a high affirmation. Not long, not complex, just one sentence. But that sentence becomes your compass for the entire day. I am peace. I am abundance. I am clarity. I am the living expression of the divine in this form. If you cannot fully believe that sentence at first, do not worry. Keep repeating, because repetition is the seed, and when it is planted often enough with growing trust, it will take root and bear fruit. One day, you will no longer try to believe. You will know it is true. And when you know, you do not argue. You do not prove. You do not explain. You simply live, breathe, and act from the place of union. There is an unshakable power in someone who declares truth in silence. No need to shout. No need to make noise. Truth does not need defense. It only needs recognition. Each correct prayer rebuilds your true image in the mind. And when that image is clear enough, strong enough, and steady enough, it no longer needs to be repeated. You will become that prayer. You will walk in peace for no reason. You will live from the awareness of one who knows who they are, and everything else will be added naturally. This is why scientific prayer is never a one-time act. It is a way of living, an inner discipline, a restructuring of your inner architecture using intentional words and aligned emotion. When you shift from complaint to declaration, your entire life begins to restructure, not because you are more deserving, but because you have stepped into your rightful place, the place where you are no longer a beggar, but one who is united with the source of creation. And from there, you do not just pray, you become the living prayer. Emotion is the temperature that determines whether the seed will sprout. A seed only needs soil to exist, but it needs the right temperature to grow. An idea only needs to be thought of to appear, but it needs the proper emotion to become reality. If thought is the seed, then emotion is the spiritual climate that determines whether that seed can live, grow, and mature into tangible results. You can think 1,000 positive thoughts a day. You can repeat affirmations using all the right techniques. You can visualize what you want with intense imagination. But if the emotion beneath all of that is worry, doubt, or insecurity, then the seed is being planted on frozen ground. It does not sprout not because you did something wrong, but because it was not warm enough. Emotion is the nurturing environment. Every time you visualize what you desire and feel as if it is already happening, you are turning up your inner temperature. You are telling your consciousness, this is not a distant dream. This is a reality unfolding inside me. And when your emotional state becomes clear, real, and consistent, reality has no choice but to respond. Emotion is not just a reaction. It is creative energy. When you see someone who seems to attract success effortlessly, look deeper into their emotional state. They are not operating from lack. They are operating from trust, presence, and a sense of inner abundance. They have adjusted their inner temperature to match what they wish to grow. So what needs adjusting is not the world, but the emotional state you live in each day. And the question for you today is, what seed are you planting? And in what emotional soil? Pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and look within. When you dream of a different life, are you nurturing it with gratitude or with urgency? When you affirm something beautiful, do you truly believe it in your heart? Or are you just repeating it like an empty ritual? This is the time to be honest, because emotion cannot be faked. It is the real vibration the universe reads and responds to every day. A person may spend years trying to figure out why they feel stuck, only to realize they are not stuck because of circumstances. They are stuck because of repeated emotional states, repeated fear, repeated doubt, repeated envy. And those feelings continuously set the temperature at freezing, blocking every seed they've ever planted. They may have studied countless principles, but their heart remains cold. They may have written down hundreds of goals, but the emotion behind them is dry. And then they conclude that life doesn't change, but it's only because the inner state hasn't changed. It is not information that transforms you. It is the emotion you attach to that information. Once you understand this, you will no longer rush. You will stop being impatient for harvest. You will begin to tend to your emotional state like a gardener tending the soil. You will become aware of your feelings every time you think of your dream. If the feeling is light, peaceful, open, then you know you are at the right temperature. If it is tense, forced, doubtful, then you know the dream does not need to change, but the consciousness nurturing it does. Maybe you don't need another method. Maybe you only need to change how you feel when you think about what you want. Emotion is the most ancient language. Before you ever knew how to speak, you already knew how to feel. And emotion is the signal the universe hears most clearly. If you want to live in a new reality, you must learn how to feel it before it arrives. You cannot wait to have it to feel joy, peace, or gratitude. You must bring those emotions in first, just like an artist colors the canvas before the world can see the final picture. Not pretending, but choosing. Not performing, but adjusting from within. And if today you are still reading this, it means something important is stirring in you. You do not need to understand everything. Just return inward and observe the emotion you carry when you think of the life you desire. Start from there. Nurture the seed with warmth, with trust, with love, with gratitude. Keep your inner climate warm enough, bright enough, deep enough, and I believe you will not only see results, you will witness something miraculous. Thank you for listening all the way here. Your presence is never random. And if there is one thing I hope you remember, it is this. Emotion is not just what you experience. It is what you use to create. So ask yourself, what are you creating today? Your mind is a factory, and you are the architect. No one builds a skyscraper by walking onto the site and hoping it assembles itself. Every structure begins with a blueprint, and every blueprint begins with someone who dares to imagine, who dares to organize, who dares to take full responsibility for every detail, every layer of foundation, every system within. Your mind works the same way. It is the factory where reality is manufactured. And no one else but you is the architect of that process. No one else is responsible for the quality of the design. No one else has been granted the authority to control the production line but you. If your life feels chaotic, look again at the mental blueprint. If your results keep repeating in painful patterns, examine the filters that are currently running inside. The mind does not produce what you wish for. It produces what has been clearly designed and consistently maintained. Every thought is an instruction. Every belief is a structural foundation. Every emotion is the cement that either holds the structure firmly or makes it prone to collapse. But most of us live as if we're workers on the factory floor with no idea what the design is. We simply react, we repeat, we apply quick fixes. And then we wonder why things don't evolve, don't change, don't rise. The reason is simple. That factory is still running on old materials, old blueprints, old habits, and old operating systems. If you want to change the outcome, you cannot just replace the workers. You must replace the architectural blueprint at the deepest level of spiritual design. Look more closely at the structure you are building in your mind each day. Every time you say, "I can't," you remove a piece of material. Every time you think, "Things always go wrong," you weaken the foundation. Every time you believe you're not worthy, you cut the funding for the entire project. And when the building collapses in a storm, you blame fate, blame others, blame the world. But the truth is, no one else is constructing this life but you, the silent yet sovereign architect. If you want a solid life, first pause. Stop building for a moment. Check the design. Ask yourself whether you're designing from inspiration or from fear, from deep intuition or outdated conditioning, from the voice of truth or the echo of old narratives that no longer serve you. And if you find the design is obsolete, don't hesitate to erase it, redraw it. A new design doesn't have to be logical right away, but it must be true to you. It doesn't need to be understood by others, but it must be clear and commit-worthy to you. The Mind Factory is always awaiting instructions. It does not operate with purpose unless the inner architect intervenes. And when you don't take the seat at the command center, someone else will. The media will program you. Fear will steer the wheel. The past will dictate the commands. And you will become an unpaid worker in your own life. The only thing that can change this is awakening. It is when you stop letting the factory run on autopilot and begin reorganizing the process, upgrading the system, and redesigning the production goals. Life doesn't demand perfection from you. It only demands that you take responsibility for what you are creating. That is the work of a true architect. A skilled architect doesn't wait for the building to be perfect, to be proud. They adjust each detail, refine every layer of design, ignore no flaw, and above all, they do not blame the structure when it doesn't turn out as hoped. They return to the drawing board. They listen again. They reconnect with what truly matters. And then they improve. Begin again today. You don't need to demolish everything. You only need to sit down and ask yourself, what kind of structure do I really want to live in? What does it look like? How does it feel? What materials is it made of? And most importantly, is the blueprint honest to who I am? This is no longer a philosophical question. It is mental engineering. You are the architect, and your mind is still waiting for a new command to begin again from you. Love, the catalyst of all miracles. There is something that cannot be defined, yet is always present. Something that cannot be held yet is always felt. Something that cannot be bought or sold yet is the source of all value. That is love. And not the kind of love that clings, craves, or controls, but love is a foundational energy, a pure catalyst for all life. You may learn hundreds of techniques, practice countless methods, study the deepest spiritual principles, but without love, all of it remains a formula without a soul. Because what activates every miracle in this life is not knowledge, but love infused into that knowledge. Love is not a fleeting emotion. It is a foundational state. A person operating from love can walk into any situation and make it sacred. They do not need to control because their presence itself recalibrates the entire space. They do not need to persuade because their energy is already an unspoken invitation. And they do not need to force results because the love within them becomes a natural magnet that draws in exactly what is needed. Love is the environment in which all miracles are born. When you do something out of genuine love, not because you have to, not to achieve something, but simply because you are fully present, then a different kind of energy begins to flow through you. It is pure, clear, and effortless. And you will sense something strange yet beautiful. It is no longer you doing the thing, but something is being done through you. This is the power of the voice within. Not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. It is no longer about forcing anything into existence, but stepping into co-creation, where everything unfolds not by pressure, but by flow and divine timing. We have lived too long in a state of striving, battling, grabbing, as if everything we desire must be wrestled from a scarce world. But reality does not function that way. When you vibrate at the frequency of love, you no longer have to demand anything. You simply need to be present. And from that place, every door opens. Because love does not just change you, it changes how reality responds to you. Love is a subtle magnetic field, yet it has the power to reshape the entire energetic structure around you. It is not loud, but it is enduring. It is not showy, but it cannot be ignored. You may have thought that changing your life requires doing something grand. But sometimes the greatest act is the simplest one, returning to the love within you. Not just to love others, but first, to love yourself completely. To accept the shadow parts that have not yet been embraced. To stop doing the right thing just to be approved. To stop straining to be an ideal version of yourself, and instead dare to live as who you truly are, full, whole, even if not perfect. And when you begin to live from love, you not only heal yourself, but you create space for others to be healed. Because love needs no explanation, it spreads through presence. A compassionate gaze can soften even the fiercest anger. A heartfelt word can soothe the deepest wounds. A simple yet meaningful act can awaken hope in a soul that has grown weary. That is true power. That is the miracle science cannot explain. But the heart always knows. If today you feel lost, pause for a moment and ask yourself, is this being nourished by love? This relationship, this work, this word, this intention, are they coming from a place that is honest and filled with love? If the answer is no, then perhaps you are walking away from your deepest path. And if you return to love, you won't need a map, because the heart always knows the way. Love does not solve every problem, but it allows every problem to be seen in a different light. Love does not eliminate pain, but it holds the pain as a necessary part of growth. Love does not erase fear, but it gently leads you through, not by force, but by companionship. And that is why every miracle begins with love. Not because love is a means to something, but because love itself is the final reward. You do not need to earn love. You only need to remember that it has always lived within you. And from that place, you can begin again quietly, calmly, gently. Just be present. Open your heart and let the miracle begin with something so simple, a heart that knows how to love. Forgiveness. Clearing the frequencies of the past to liberate energy. Not everyone realizes that forgiveness is not about justifying someone's wrong actions. Nor does it mean you have to forget the pain you endured. Forgiveness is not a moral obligation, nor is it a gift you give to others. Forgiveness is one of the deepest acts of inner work you can do for yourself. Because when you don't forgive, you are not holding someone else in memory. You are holding yourself in the vibrational layer of old pain. And that is a burden you carry with you in every step of your creative journey. Every unhealed memory is an unreleased energetic layer. It remains frozen in your vibrational system like stones blocking a flowing spring. You may not think about it every day, but it still subtly shapes the way you react, the way you defend yourself, the way you doubt, and the way you unconsciously limit yourself in your choices. Pain that is not acknowledged becomes a lens that distorts reality. And no one but you can dissolve it with one courageous act: forgiveness. Forgiveness is a declaration that you no longer allow the past to dictate your current frequency. It is not about forgetting. It is about cleansing. No one can truly move forward while still carrying the emotional residue of the past. Anger, resentment, heartbreak, betrayal, and injustice all leave a vibrational trace in you. And if left unreleased, they will continue to emit signals into the space around you, attracting similar situations to mirror the same pain as the mind unconsciously seeks closure for something left unfinished. You cannot create a new reality while still tying yourself to an old story. Forgiveness is how you release the lock, how you declare that you will not let an old chapter define the rest of this book. And most importantly, forgiveness does not require an apology, nor does it need validation from anyone. Forgiveness is not dependent on circumstances. It is an act of sovereign will from within. You forgive because you choose to release yourself from the freeze, from the drain, from the invisible exhaustion of resisting what is already over. Forgiveness doesn't happen in a single moment. It is a process of renewing the energetic layers within you. Sometimes you think you've forgiven, but when a memory resurfaces, your chest still tightens. That doesn't mean you failed. It simply means you need one more moment of presence, one more breath through that pain, one more reminder that you choose freedom. And each time, another layer is shed, another portion of your energy is reclaimed, Another stream within you begins to flow again. Forgiveness is a return, not to the past, but to yourself before the wound. It is a return to the original state, before you were shaped by expectations, hurt, betrayal, or loss. You don't forgive to deny what happened, but to reclaim the part of you that is no longer defined by it. Forgiveness is the act of choosing to clear the river of consciousness, so energy can flow freely again, without blockages, without guilt, without needing anyone else to be responsible for your peace. Remember, forgiveness is not weakness. It is the strongest act of someone awakened enough to understand that they no longer need to carry darkness in their heart. Each time you choose forgiveness, you choose light. Each time you say, "I no longer hold this," you return your system to its natural flow. And each time you exhale a memory, you make the present more open, more vibrant, more ready to receive what you truly wish to create. You don't have to force yourself to love the one who hurt you, but you must stop hurting yourself by keeping them within your energy field. Forgiveness doesn't change them, but it completely changes your vibrational field, and that changes everything. You don't need a grand reason to forgive. You only need to be tired enough of carrying a weight that no longer belongs to the present, and you need to be ready to choose freedom. Forgiveness doesn't say everything is okay. It simply says that this no longer controls you. Releasing trapped energy doesn't come from external action. It comes from an inner decision. The decision to forgive needs no audience, no applause, only your presence turning inward and saying to yourself, "I am ready to let go." And from that moment, a door opens. A layer of fog lifts. A stream of light begins to spread in your inner space. You do not change the past, but you change how it lives in you. And that is enough to change the future. You are God's living idea, a creative expression in human form. You are not just a small human being trying to make sense of the world. You are God's living idea. You are not an accident. You are not a chemical reaction. You are not a byproduct of randomness. You are an intentional, precise, and completely unique expression of the creative mind, taking form in human shape, and that is the true foundation of every miracle within you. A living idea is never stagnant. It moves, it grows, it creates. If God is the creator, then you, as part of that thought, carry within your consciousness the entire capacity to create, without limits, without lack, without dependence on circumstances. All you need is to remember, to live from that truth, to stop acting like a being disconnected from Source, and start living as an uninterrupted extension of that Source. You are not limited by your past. You are only limited by the way you think of yourself. When you define yourself as a victim, you act from woundedness. When you define yourself as someone on a journey of learning, you walk with openness. But when you remember that you are the embodiment of a divine idea, every step you take carries the energy of creation, healing, and expansion. Not because you're trying to be strong, but because you are living in truth. God's living idea did not come to merely survive. It came to express, to manifest, to evolve endlessly. Every thought you allow is part of a creative process. Every word you speak is a seed carrying energy. Every action you take, no matter how small, is an expansion of the divine in human form. And you don't need to do anything grand. You only need to live from the knowing that you are never separate from the Source. All you need is to remember. Remember that you are not asking for life. You are life itself. You are not waiting for a miracle. You are the place through which miracles are meant to unfold. You are not seeking light. You are where light seeks to express itself. And each moment you return to this truth, you create a frequency strong enough to completely change how the world responds to you. The journey of healing, the path of creation, the rising beyond limitation does not begin with skills, effort, or external conditions. It begins with awareness. The awareness that you are the living idea of the one who created all things. And when a living idea awakens to itself, nothing can stand in its way. So, if you have ever doubted your worth, remember this: you were not born to prove anything. You were born to express. You were not created to fit any mold. You were created to be yourself, and you are never alone. You carry within you a part of the eternal mind, operating through this form, this voice, these eyes, this heart. You don't need to become special. You are already special because you are the one irreplaceable part in God's complete picture. No one else can live your portion. No one else can speak your words, walk your path, or shine the light you were born to bring into this world. And if, up until now, you've been holding on to smallness, fear, insecurity, or a sense of not being good enough, let it go like a coat that no longer fits. Rise from where you are. Say to yourself with unwavering certainty, I no longer live as a beggar. I live as one who has been chosen. Because I am a living part of the divine idea, moving through human form to fulfill the sacred purpose of life itself. Thank you for showing up in this journey, for listening with an open heart, for daring to remember the truth the world tried to make you forget. This is not just a video. This is a reminder, a doorway, a return. And if there's one thing you carry with you after all of this, let it be this: you don't need to become enough, because you were created from enoughness. Walk as one who carries the truth. Live as a light no longer hidden. And return here whenever you need, because this is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. See you on the next journey. Hold your light, hold your faith, and keep creating. Because the world needs you, not another version of you, but exactly you.